Welcome back, everybody. WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. Zach Gelb and Mike Zahn here with you. The Flyers are back in the playoffs, and they have a big game one tonight as they're playing the President Trophy winners in the Washington Capitals. And now joining us is a man that does a fantastic job as the Flyers color analyst on 97.5 The Fanatic, and that's Steve Coates. Coatesy, how are you, my friend?
Great, thank you. How about you guys today?
Well, we're doing great, and we can't wait for puck drop tonight in Washington. But first, this is the first game that the Flyers are playing without their longtime owner and Mr. Snyder, who you know a few days ago passed away from a long-time battle with cancer. Just how do you remember Mr. Snyder?
Well, Mr. Snyder was an amazing person. He's the only owner that the Philadelphia Flyers have ever known. And, you know, he took a risk back in 1967 on a National Hockey League team when the team joined on the first expansion of the NHL, and he turned it into an empire. And it was all about his team, his players. He was very passionate about it, and it's kind of surreal that this team made the playoffs on a Saturday afternoon, and he passed away the very next day after a long battle. And I think that every one of these players know what this is about because they had an opportunity to go visit him in the beginning of January out in California. And it was a special day for everybody. It was a special day for Mr. Snyder. So when you take a look at his legacy and what he's done for the National Hockey League and what he's done for sports in Philadelphia, it's a huge loss. But that'll be a big part of the emotion here tonight to begin this series against the Washington Capitals.
You talk about that emotion. What has been some of the players' reaction? Because I know guys like Wayne Simmonds, Shane Gostisbehere, and Claude Giroux are very close with their owner and Mr. Snyder.
Well, Mr. Snyder was the guy that I mentioned. It's all about the players. It's not even about the broadcasters, the coaches. It's about the players. Everything is about the players. And there's not a player that played here in Philadelphia dating back to 67 that doesn't understand that. And so the players that are here now and that have been here a couple of years, like Giroux and Simmonds and these guys, they understand what the owner can do and what the owner meant to them and what they meant for the owner. So it just makes everything special. I think he was a very special guy when it came to that, and that makes it an even more emotional time.
And we've been talking about this all week, and we had a great confidant of Mr. Snyder's on in Lou Scheinfeld. And you're a hockey historian in this town. I know you got to know Mr. Snyder very well over the years. Can you just share some good Ed Snyder stories with us?
I can tell you a real good one. Mr. Snyder was one that he liked to have a good time. He worked hard and played hard. So when it was time to go out, we always had a good time. So we were in Buffalo, and we were staying in a hotel that had supposedly a 5-star restaurant. That's kind of an oxymoron for Buffalo.
You're exactly right.
So we were in Buffalo, and we always had a routine. And the routine was that we would watch the Western Conference playoffs in a bar or a restaurant, and it was very low-key. And then we would go and play the game the next night. It was every other night we would go to and watch the Western Conference playoffs in the bar. Well, Mr. Snyder said, listen, we're going to go in that 5-star restaurant and eat. And Clarky said, no, we're not. We're going in the bar. We're going to have a burger. We're going to watch the game. Well, Mr. Snyder wasn't going to get one up. So he brought the 5-star restaurant into the sports bar. Brought the linens in, the guys with the tuxedos, the maitre d', the whole thing. The same menu, and we're sitting in the sports bar. So there's about 13 of us, 14 of us, because the scouts were in town, and there's all the broadcasters and all the coaches and all the management, Mr. Snyder, and we had a heck of a time. The president of the network was there. We had a heck of a time, and it was obviously it had to be about a $3,000, $3,500 bill. And he got up and he left with the president of the network, and I said to the maitre d', I said, excuse me, but who pays for that? He goes, well, the guy, I said, please don't tell me the guy with the hair combed back. He goes, well, he did. I said, he didn't tell you he was the owner, did he? He goes, well, he did, yes. I said, oh, did he charge on his credit card or did he charge to his room? He said, charged to his room. I said, he's not even staying here. He's at the day's end. That's not our owner. He's a bus driver. Well, this guy, he went absolutely, like, he couldn't believe it. The bus driver signed for his meal. There's no way. He wasn't even, and I said, well, we'll have some fun with this guy for a couple of minutes because Mr. Snyder's gone. He's not coming back. Don't you know, about 10 minutes later, Mr. Snyder came back through the door, and this guy's over telling him that I said that he was the bus driver.
Oh, boy.
So So he came back over to me. He goes, "Did you tell that guy that was the bus driver?" And he goes, I said, "Yeah." I said, "I did tell him you're the bus driver, but I said you're the best bus driver in the league." Well, he just thought that he couldn't stop laughing over it. And to the other day, I mean, we could laugh about that. It was just unbelievable. He always enjoyed that.
We're talking to Flyers color analyst on 97.5 The Fanatic and Steve Coates, and we're remembering the life of Mr. Snyder as well as talking some Flyers. So you've been with this organization for a while. Was there any specific player, coach, maybe even someone on the training staff that Mr. Snyder was particularly close with that people wouldn't have expected him to be close with?
No, I don't think so. I think he, looking back at it, I think that he was friends with everybody. He was friends, but it wouldn't be people that would be hanging around or going to dinner with him. No, nothing like that. It was for the most part, business relationship. When you got together socially, like at a golf tournament or like that, obviously he always had a special spot in his heart for the guys that won the Stanley Cup. You know, Bernie's and the Joe Watsons and Bob Clarks and those people. But no particular friendships over and above what you would normally have in a business relationship.
And now getting to the product on the ice, what's just been the mood around the locker room? Obviously, there's been a couple days off since the Flyers last played in Brooklyn, and then they beat the Islanders. And since the passing of Mr. Snyder and the playoff jitters, just what's been the mood around the locker room leading up to this game?
Well, I think that all these players on this hockey club are excited. I mean, we've got a lot of kids that are this is all new to them. And this team has grown together this year. And they've grown together in such a way where the conference level is one where the resiliency has been unbelievable. I mean, they every time you think, "Oh, that's it, it's over," and they bounce. And we've seen a couple of times in the last month where they lost big games and they bounced back with bigger games to win. And so the attitude is one that it's excitement. Obviously, they're going to be wearing patches, which is going to provide an emotional situation for them because of the passing of Mr. Snyder. But I just think this team is a never-say-die team. They just keep coming, bouncing back, and they got a really good attitude and having a lot of fun. You got to have a lot of fun. If you don't have fun, then you're not going to be successful.
We're talking to Steve Coates, who joins us on the hotline for a few more minutes as the Flyers start their quest for the Stanley Cup tonight in Washington. And they have a very tough team in their way. They're the preeminent team in the NHL this year in the Capitals. You know the Flyers have the confidence because they have beaten Washington before in this series. But if they're going to want to win this series, they have to steal one of these first two. What are some of your keys if the Flyers want to get a win in one of these first two games, Steve?
Goaltending. The goalie has to be your best player. Steve Mason has to be the best player on the ice tonight for the Philadelphia Flyers for them to win, because you're playing against a really high-powered offense. I mean, the number one shooter in the National Hockey League, Ovechkin, he's going to be firing that puck, and you've got to be able. You're not going to stop him. You get that squared away right now. You're not going to stop him. But you got to slow him down. If he's going to score two, you don't want him to score two. You want to have him score one. And it's just a matter of understanding of keeping him to the outside, trying to block as many shots as possible to help your goaltender. But the goaltender is definitely the number one key to this game.
And you take a look at this Caps team. They have that title of being chokers in years past. With Ovechkin, they never made it to the Eastern Conference Final. You even saw it last year. They're up late against the Rangers, 3-1 in that series. They end up going on to lose that series in 7 at Madison Square Garden. What makes this Caps team different this year than maybe from those other teams? Because all the pressure is on them in this series, Coatsy.
Well, I think that they changed the culture here. I think that bringing in Barry Trotz, the new general manager, I think that they changed the culture. If you can get a guy like Ovechkin, who was a minus player, to become a plus player and still get the same scoring from him, you've done a heck of a job. So I think Barry Trotz is a big reason this Capitals team is a lot better. I think when you look at the team itself, it's deep through all 4 lines. It's got good defense. They're aggressive. They're physical. So this team is built for winning. There's no two ways about it. For building and winning a Stanley Cup. In saying that, they've now got to prove they've got the ability to take it to the next level, and it's right there in front of them right now, like you said. In fact, it was the year the Stanley Cup, the Flyers went to play the Blackhawks, and the Stanley Cup was the year they got upset by Montreal, and the Flyers won their series is to go all the way. So you never can tell what's going on when it comes to the playoffs. So it's right there on the plate for them, and it's their opportunity. But I would not be surprised if we left here with a win in the series because of the way this team's played. Because there's so much emotion going on with it right now, and they've played them very well this year. That's the other thing. They've played them very well.
You mentioned the importance of Steve Mason, and he was obviously in net for a little bit longer than people were expecting when Michael Neuwirth went down with his injury. And Mason really rode the ship right there. The Flyers ended the year 15-5-3. It was a very impressive end to the regular season. But due to all those starts, do you think that Steve Mason might be a little tired to start this postseason?
No, not at all. I don't think so. I think that there was a couple of back-to-backs. Maybe that was true. But he's had... he's had 3 days, 4 days now. I think that when you take a look at goaltenders, I think they relish the opportunity of playing all the games. They get better when they have that opportunity. I thought Neuwirth was the better goalie for a lot of the year. And then when Neuwirth went down, it was up to Mason to prove to everybody that he was the number one goalie of the Philadelphia Flyers. And he did that. So, no, I don't think there's any questions about him. I mean, if that was true, then Holtby'd have the same problem. Holtby was, they were working him to death. Nearly broke Brodeurs' record, but I think the goalies, for the most part, really love the work, and I think Mason's one of those guys.
And if the Flyers want to win, not only do they need some good goaltending, but they'll need some timely scoring. This season, Wayne Simmonds had a career year, lit the lamp time after time, 30-plus goals this year for Wayne Simmonds. And come playoff time, he's the type of guy who can get those garbage goals that you expect in the playoffs. Is there a way that he can even elevate his game from the regular season into the postseason?
Well, I think, Wayne Simmonds is going to bring you what you see all the time. I think the only way you're going to elevate his game is by the people he plays with. Right now, I don't think that Jake Voracek's been played up to his caliber of play in the last 2 weeks. And if he gets going, then that line, Giroux, Simmonds, and Voracek could be scary. And that would be a very important thing to the Flyers to match the line of a Backstrom, TJ Oshie, and Ovechkin. But there's not going to be a lot of matching of lines, especially here in Washington. Dave Axtell really doesn't like to do that because he loses the rhythm of his lines. So he likes to be able to rotate his lines and worry about more of the rhythm and getting everybody into the game as compared to having somebody jump out every time there's Ovechkin or Backstrom out there. So if Voracek comes and gives a little bit more and can produce a little bit more, Simmonds and Giroux will definitely profit, and so will the team.
Coatsy, we appreciate the time. We'll be listening tonight, and we'll also see you back in Philly for a Game 3. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.
There is Steve Coates joining us on the hotline, WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. Time in the WHIP studios is 11:29. And, Mike, I think this is a series that's going to be a long one. I know that we are in disagreement about this, as you think it will be wrapped up pretty quickly. I think you picked the Caps in 5. I think the Caps win this series, but they win it in 7 games. But if the Flyers want to make it a series, like I told Coatsy, they have to find a way to steal one of these first 2 games. Because all this pressure, even throughout this whole season during the dominant run that was the Washington Capitals, everyone says it doesn't matter until they do it in the postseason. Because this team, year after year, has come up short in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And if you want the pressure to really kick in, the Flyers need to steal one of these first 2 games and then bring it back to their home ice. And I like the way the Flyers match up with the Capitals, but it just seems like this is the Capitals' year. And we've seen teams play a very rigorous first series before and make it to the Stanley Cup final and win it. And you want to win these games in the fewest amount of games possible to give you a rest with how vital rest is in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But I think we're heading to a 7-game series. And Coatsy's right. You can't stop Ovechkin right now. But there are ways that you can contain him, and teams have done that in the past. So as long as you get what you've been getting all year long out of Simmonds, Giroux, Braden Shen, who's been the X factor to this team, a really underrated player, and maybe Voracek elevates his game as he's been battling injuries on and off all season long, maybe the Flyers, with that emotional impact, are able to do the unthinkable. But once again, I think this thing goes 7, and then the Caps move on to the next round.